Charlie Corner. I'm the owner of FirstDown PlayBook, and I coached for 30 years myself. Not a day in high school. A student taught in high school, so that's how much I, can contribute here from this standpoint. That's why we reached out and found 6 individuals that are tremendously experienced and bring a lot to the table here, and I'm excited about it. The mission here is it's that time of year. Coaches are moving. High school is getting more like college, where coaches want to move up. Coaches move from school to school. Some coaches get moved. I mean, they get fired and that type of thing. So we see it a lot. We work with coaches, obviously, with FirstDown PlayBook. Also, we see it on the internet, and these days even on social media. I'm seeing people put their resumes out there on social media, just looking to try to get a chance for an opportunity for an interview. So our thought was to offer experienced advice from 6 different areas here. I mean, you're spread all across the country right here. So I'm gonna go very quickly, but I do want to introduce, because I am humbled by the amount of experience that we do have here. So I'm gonna go alphabetical order. Jay Alexander. I don't know how y'all look at it, but your view here, but he's in the middle to top for me. He's the executive director of athletics at the Detroit Public Schools. Has been so for 6.5 years, worked with big brothers, big sisters, been in private business, and also you coach baseball at Eastern Michigan. Jay, is that right?
That is correct.
All right, so welcome, Jay, from Detroit, Michigan. Tracy Bouchard, am I saying it right, Tracy?
It's Bogart.
Bogart, okay. Tracy is right now outside of Austin, but her home, I guess, is in Odessa, Texas, executive director for athletics at Ector County Independent School District, 35 years as a teacher, coach, and administrator, and 5 years as the executive director. And so she's coming to us from outside of Austin, Texas. Mike Carter. Mike is at Bloomfield High School, New Jersey. Mike just finished his 36th season as a head coach, and has also played there, didn't you, Coach, at this same school?
Yeah. Played for Frank Glazier, too, if we talked about that.
Frank Glazier is a common friend, and anybody that's heard of Glazier football clinics, Mike and I, maybe you did too. We knew Frank and his wife Eleanor, but he's I don't know how many wins. He denied it was 350 when I said it earlier, but he got quite a few wins out there as well. So Scott Kreiner, who just joined us, is out at Rocky Mountain High School in Idaho. 45 years as a football coach, recently retired. I seriously have questions about that, because when I called him last week, he was on FirstDown PlayBook looking up wing T stuff. So I don't know how that retirement stuff's going to go for Scott. But he's been in college at Cincinnati, University Pacific, Utah State, Navy, Northern Arizona, and also, once again, has recently been a coordinator, head coach back and forth at several schools in Idaho. Chad Johnson. Chad's out in Mission Viejo, California. Chad's been a long-time FirstDown PlayBook coach, and we sincerely appreciate that part. He is out in Football Strong, California, was the offensive coordinator at St. John's Bosco before coming over to, I guess it was 2018, when you got the head job at Mission Viejo. Chad is consistently one of the best programs in the state of California. And once again, we all know how competitive that is. And they won a state championship in 2023. So we're very excited about having Chad here. And then we were all listening to Lauren just a second ago. Lauren's from my home state, state of Virginia, and he's at Highland Springs. I'm glad I did talk to him a little bit, because you've been there 16 years, Lauren, is that right?
That's correct, 18 years.
16 years. I think he just said he played for the state championship 8 years, 8 of those years.
Yeah, 8 of the last 11. We've played in the
8 of the last 11. So, and also was a coach at another school there. And as we all heard before, he went to Virginia Tech. His one son goes to Virginia Tech, one goes to Wake. And once again, he's from my home state. That the area he coaches football out there is very competitive as well. So back to the original deal we talked about. And we've got to start somewhere, and we're going to try to move this thing around. There is no script here. You bring experience off the chart here. So if you've got something to offer after somebody, and maybe I ask somebody the question, jump in. That's the way that I want to do this. But it's got to start somewhere. So, Scott, I'm gonna start with you since you're retired. Um, your experience, the outline that I gave you get in the interview process itself. But what's your advice for someone as they begin? They know they're going to have the interview, and things that they can do before they ever walk in that door, walk in that school, walk in that building. Where would you start with that, Scott, about ways to prepare?
Well, one of the things that we do here at Rocky is I've been fortunate about 4 of my guys have gone on to become head coaches here in the state. And I put together a PowerPoint for them and said, hey, these are things that you should have covered in your interview process. When you walk in the door, if you have visuals, having something to make sure that when you walk out of the door, they have something to look back at and go over. I had been an athletic director as well. And I told them, I said, it's, at some schools, they don't tell you who's on the panel. But you can expect, you should know who the principal is, and you should know who the athletic director is, and you should know what the culture's like, and you should have an idea of what their success rate has been, and or what it hasn't been, and then be able to talk to that as you present yourself. And you should be very much aware that when you walk in that door, you want to show them that you can fit what that culture, what they're looking for. And if they don't have a culture, then what kind of culture are you going to develop? And put together some plan, some game plan that allows you to go through talking about Booster Club, talking about team discipline, talking about what makes you special. We do a thing at Rocky called Uncommon. And when I first applied for the job in 2013, it was something that we presented at that time and had an idea that it would be good. I had no idea how strong it would be. Asked the principal, how can I become involved in the culture of the school? If you're an off-campus coach, for example, what can I do? Can I come to meetings in the fall? Can I be a part of it? Don't talk about how much money it is. That should be something that's privately done, I think, on the back end. And then also don't pigeonhole yourself. Don't walk in and say, hey, we're a run and shoot guy. I'm a run and shoot guy. I'm going to throw the football, because in high school, you don't get to recruit your guys. And so how much flexibility do you have? And then, what are those things that you build your program around? Is it around your offensive line? And that is being, maybe those are the worst athletes you get every year on a football team. And how do you build around having success? And, what principles do you have that help you, share and use that? So every year, it's not just a one and done. I'm having success on a yearly basis. I know when I first came in, my goal was to make the playoffs every year and be a semifinal team. And if you made the semifinals, then obviously you're doing a great job. And then if you got beyond that, then some of that's luck, some of it's just good, solid coaching. And how do you present that to those people on the committee?
Tracy, what's and I'm going to ask Odessa. I mean, I would guess smaller place where most people know each other. Is that correct?
I would say so, yes. One of the biggest hiccups we probably have right now is that we are so oil field rich, in our community, that we have so much movement in and out now. Back, and I'll give you a little bit of background. I grew up in Odessa. My parents were both coaches. I played sports there, finished college, had a job waiting for me there. So I've grown up in this community, for the last 50 years. And what I see now compared to what I used to see, I used to see the tight knit. I don't see that as much anymore because of the influx of so many people coming in and out due to the oil field. But what we've also seen is so many people that I'm trying to prepare for the next level, whether it's a junior high coach to an assistant high school, assistant high, school to a high school, a head high school, is the fact that they're going to the oil field because the oil field is paying double the amount of money that, the school district pays. And so I wouldn't say that it's as tight knit as it used to be. But it's still a great community. The funny thing about that is you see so much oil money, and the Permian Basin is sitting, I think, number one in the United States right now, with the oil flow, but you don't see the oil flow and the money coming into the school district,
That was
to really help and enhance our kids. Yeah, you know, hey everybody, just so you know that we're home of Friday Night Lights, the movie Friday Night Lights. We also film Landman. I don't know if anyone's heard of Landman. We also film Landman at our stadium, and so we're pretty football known. We're the Permian Panthers, but you have seen a change, and so what you see now is I have a harder time getting people into that area, because it's out in West Texas, and we don't have that much to offer, and that's the hard part.
It's interesting because does the money become a factor just to build on that? I mean, are there boosters that are part of the oil business out there that the coach coming in would need to know about? Is that part of your life or not?
Yeah, I would say so. Yes, and so one of the things that if I'm trying to, here's probably what's impressed me most of all when I visit with coaches, whether they're moving out, or moving in. The more they know about the community that they're coming to or leaving to, the better off they're going to be when it comes to an interview. I feel, and that's just what I've seen over the years, at preparation, whether it's community or the program or the kids involved, or maybe it's studying a little bit of film, to but then get ready to come to Odessa, and you're going to go, wow, you're exactly right. This is nothing but oil field, and so, that, and do you want your kid to land there? If you have kids, and Coach Johnson, just Coach Johnson want his kids, landing in the oil field, because we have so many kids, and I only have two high schools. We're two big 6A high schools. We have 4,000, in each school. But we have one school that it doesn't surprise me one bit for a kid to quit and go straight to the oil field. Well, I could make $75,000 in the oil field, and I'm just a helper
Wow.
with nothing, with no nothing, And so that's what's hard, on our end of it, and we're just trying to grow kids to get them to go be great.
So Coach Carter, you're one of your sons coaches with you, right? Or did?
I've got five kids that my two oldest coach when they were both very good athletes too. They were both one was both football players and baseball players, and they're both all Americans in college in baseball. And
So
coaching with them was a blast. I had a good time with that.
so they come to you and they're wanting to go interview for a head coaching job in your neighborhood or close. What advice are you giving them? What are you telling them? How are you telling them to prepare?
Uh, just what the previous two just said. I think that's super important. I think you really need to know where you're going, what the history of the place is. And again, sometimes you say is that well, it's supposed to be a great job. He says, okay, then why is the job open? And then when the job is open, okay, what are they looking for? Are they looking for wins? They're looking for character development. They're looking for discipline. They're looking for however it is. I think also if you're going to go in, best if it helps if you can possibly be a teacher in the building also. That helps a lot. A lot of the guys in New Jersey try to do that. I mean, there are some guys that don't do that, but vast majority of them are. And you got to know what what's included in the commitment to be the head coach. I mean, some guys will say best thing they ever did was being an assistant coach. Other guys love being the head coach, and I think everybody here could tell you they have. You have days when being a head coach is it's a little hectic, and you have a lot of days where it's really good, but other days where it's it's not the easiest thing in the world. But if I were to tell them that they were going into it, I just say you have to go in head first, and you have to go in fully committed and understand what the time and demands of the job are going to be.
It's hard to find anything these days that's not a little bit political, and there's an old saying that all politics are local. When you go to that job. Jay, if someone's coming into a interview for a head high school job in the Detroit area, I mean, are there people that he should know? I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely. And politically, like you said, like Mike said, you want to make sure that you have either, if you're not going to be a teacher in the building, and we have a lot of coaches who are not, and our coaching positions are stipend positions, so we have a lot of professional guys that are doing it second. But the most important thing is to either have somebody in the building that's going to be on your staff so that they can help control their environment and the culture and keep the kids engaged, or or you have the ability to be able to go and work in the building, right? So I think that's critical for the success and the culture building experience. Because in Detroit, we have 20 high schools, and all of our positions are stipend positions, and it's and most of those coaches, if they're not teachers, they're professionals, like I said. So it's imperative to have that. The other thing is to understand the community that you're walking into, right? Understanding the type of kids that you're going to be coaching, because there's going to be times where you're going to have to take a kid home. You're going to have to make sure they get home safely because the environment that you're in, it's not safe. So also you're going to have to be, understand the role. And we have a really tough school around here. And one of our head coaches is an assistant principal, and he is the backbone of that, not only of the school, but the football team. And as a result, because he is, permeated his culture to a positive way, and he's in the building every day, he's built a really good program. And the scary is that he's probably going to be a principal soon, and they're going to have to start from ground zero, and that could be a potential bombshell, right? So again, knowing the community, knowing the kids that you serve, the type of kids that you serve. I mean, we have two very good high school, King and Cass. I'm sure most have heard of them, but we have everything else is just middle of the road type deal. So those are different. But you go to your Osborns and your Persians, that's where you really gotta, and Denby's, you gotta really dive in and understand that culture, right? And so we ask those individuals to, when you come in, you really have to paint a picture. Not only you understand it, but what are you going to do to get those kids through school and through football? Because there's a lot of other variables. I mean, you have no parents, you have one parent, you have trouble around the area. It's, am I go make this money, this quick money, or am I going to go to practice, right? So you also gotta understand finding resources, and when I say resources is how you're going to feed the kids after school, right? Most of the time we provide that through our school system, but there's times where kids go because they're not going to be effective if their bellies are hungry, right? If they're empty, bellies are empty. So you gotta think through that, and you got to be able to provide some resources or come to the table and say, okay, here's a plan. And I think kind of have a 5-year plan, as far as your goals. Like year one, we're going to create a culture. Year two, we're going to win six games. You're going to try to win 6 games. Year three, we're going to vie for the PSL championship. Year four, we're going to win more games in the state playoffs. Year five, we're going to be a contender, right? So just kind of like having that plan.
Chad, when you went in from the Mission Viejo, you were a coordinator, well-respected coordinator. Well, how did you prepare? I mean, that's
It's very important too. Is I had my high school coach tell me, he goes, way before you actually want a job, interview and jobs you necessarily don't want. I thought it was very good advice. I went on a few interviews to schools where I had no intention of actually, taking the job just to get practice, and then making notes of interview questions, getting feedback after the interview of what, I thought I did well and what I didn't do well from the people they interviewed on the panel there. So when I had a chance to interview for the job I really wanted in Mission Viejo, it wasn't my first interview. I knew what I was doing. I had the kind of unique perspective of going from public school my first 9 years then moving over to St. John Bosco in Los Angeles, and being a private school for 8.5, and then coming back to the public school. So I see kind of both sides of it. But I think what Coach Kreiner said is very important, like doing your due diligence, doing your research on the school you're interviewing at, knowing everything about them. When I presented in all my interviews, I had a packet, not a PowerPoint presentation, but a packet that I had that laid out everything I did. It was the total plan. And a 12-month plan, not only that, but a 5-year plan, what we were going to do on offense and defense. And just like Coach Kreiner said, you have to be flexible in those plans. You can't say, I'm going to come in and throw the ball around. Well, what if you guys don't have a quarterback? So you got to make sure you mention the fact that we're going to be multiple, we're going to be flexible year in, year out. But these are the things that we want to hang our hats on, which are fundamentals. We're going to hang our hat in the weight room. We're going to be a physical football team. Those are things you can do, whether or not you have talent at certain positions year in, year out. I also think, doing, research on the school as far as like what's their demographics, how big are they? When I turned the packet in to Mission Viejo, everything in the packet was red and gold. And I think Coach Kreiner mentioned something about, I heard maybe a hashtag uncommon or something like that, a saying he had. I think that's also, a great thing to have. Come into the school with your catchphrase, your new hashtag. Here we're the Mission Viejo Diablos. So mine was feed the flame. And so that was what we wanted to do. We wanted to have a hashtag, we want to have a saying, and then kind of create that culture right off the bat. So I think that's really important. To make sure you kind of know everything about the school you're going to, you have your plan, you have your packet. And then that last thing on as far as the interviews, if your packet's right in front of you and, maybe you get stuck for a second, you can pause, reference your packet and go, okay, that's the answer that I prepared. I just got stumped a little nervous, whatever the case may be. But you have also a reference guide to go back to, because you prepared that packet over weeks and weeks at a time. And that interview you might get a little nervous, something like that. So now it's like, okay, well, let me find what I had prepared. Okay, yeah, that's right. Now I can answer that question accurately and well. So those are kind of things that I thought that my head coach had prepared me for, and he did a wonderful job. And I felt like it really was an easier process than I expected. And then finally, the last thing that I got on my interview, the second interview, in fact. So the first interview was kind of like get to know you, broad principles, broad questions. The second interview was a lot of football X's and O's. And then situational head coaching things like, get Monday in season, Monday morning, principal calls you in, your star player drunk, got busted by the cops on the weekend. What do you do? Like situations like that, which I thought were very good questions, because unfortunately, those are situations that you have to deal with as the head coach, right? And then it went from that to, all right, it's 3rd and 7, games on the line. What are you calling on offense? You're supposed to be this big time offense coordinator, Coach Johnson. What do you call on 3rd and 7? And so it's like, okay, it's so, those are some things I think you should be prepared for. If the school that you're interviewing for is going to do it right. Mission Viejo was a big time school that has lots of tradition back till 70s and 80s, right, when it opened. So and I was replacing a legend as well, and Bob Johnson, whose sons Rob and Brett. Rob played for the Buffalo Bills for a bunch of years, and the Buccaneers, and they were coaching here. So I was replacing a legend. So it was a thorough process. They even had questions about my second interview, like, tell me what your sidelines look like on a high school Friday night. What do you want sidelines to look like? And I was like, oh wow, okay, yeah, you're right. I guess as the head coach, I got to be in control of my signs, and thankfully we had lots of fun meetings at Bosco, because the $1 million donors didn't want the $2,000 donors standing next to them on the sideline. So we had a whole thing at Bosco, we had to deal with there. But yeah, it was a lot of different questions, which I actually appreciated, because since then I have been on some other interviews as a panel member where I didn't think we did, a very good job. We just kind of fill a position and move on. It was kind of like a half butt job, honestly, but I was actually appreciative. I think that's another thing as the coach. Like, if you go in there and they're not asking you a bunch of tough questions, and they just, it's like, we're staggering interviews every 20, 30 minutes. Next guy's in, like, they don't care. They just want to fill the job. If it's a school that's serious about finding a good coach, there should be multiple interviews. That thing should be long and thorough. So they can figure out who just took the packet from someone else and slapped their name on it, and they actually have no idea what's in the packet or the PowerPoint, right? Like you got to go and take a deep dive. I appreciate the fact that Mission VO did that, and that's why I knew it was the right place for me.
Makes total sense. And interviews are two-way streets too. So, but most of the people here, it sounds like um, local to some degree. Lauren, you're coming from Miami, Florida, and you're not at Highland Springs, but your first job, you had one other job before that. As an outsider coming in, what was your approach? Was it um, how did you handle that? I mean, from Miami, I'm from Virginia. Miami, Florida seemed like it could be Mars, really. So how did you do that?
Well, I'll tell you guys this. I grew up in Miami, and then I played football at Virginia Tech. So I had some connection to the state of Virginia, and I understood. But when I first got my job, first job I ever interviewed for to be a head coach, I was 23 years old. So I didn't have a clue, right? So everything that Chad's saying, Coach Kreiner saying, Jay, Tracy, it was a whirlwind for me. So jumping into it and having that opportunity, everything that was mentioned earlier, when you're talking about knowing the environment that you're going into. The individual that I replaced for my first coaching job, the school is called Unity Reed now. When I was interviewing for the head coaching job, it was called Stonewall Jackson. So at Stonewall Jackson, the guy that interviewed or had the job before me, he got the job in 1977. I was born in 1977. So I was replacing a guy that had been there 23 years. So it was an interesting deal, and I had to learn a lot about everything that everybody said.
We've approached this from a standpoint, really, a lot of different ways that you come into it. As you're going into the interview, the one thing that was different about this, me as a college coach, NFL coach, it got to the football part of it very quickly. I mean, and as an assistant coach, as I was doing my due diligence for this, a lot of bigger things that y'all have all brought up right now. How you gonna handle discipline? How you gonna handle the booster club? How you gonna handle it's I won't call it babysitting, but there's a lot of things that go into it that don't come up with the college part of it. But at some point, there also is a structure that has to be considered football wise. And I'm not X and O's are a part of that. I mean, if the X and O's aren't there, that coach is not going to be there very long. But even above and beyond that, really is how organized are you with the way that you're going to do a game week, a season. I mean, I look at Chad, I look at you, and one year you're traveling to, I don't know, you're on the East Coast one year, the Tennessee this year. I mean, when you go in, what structure? All right, and I get to everybody here, but what structure? How do you show the committee you're organized?
So, we actually put everything on our Google Drives here. So, for example, we lost to Mater Dei on Friday, and on Monday, I had already, done the 2026 season on Google Drive and had the whole entire calendar laid out through the next season. I just try to get ahead of things, and stay extremely organized and do it early on, so our families knew, okay, season's over, okay, what are our vacation days? What's our dead period? When can we go on vacation? When we can't? I try to do everything extremely in advance. And then, next year we're traveling to Folsom. I actually have a guy, I'm not going to say it's all me. I have a guy that I work with. It's kind of like concierge service actually for travel. His name is Brian Hercules. He's awesome. And he helps me and we pay him a little bit to help me like find cheap flights and stuff like that. So we work together on that. But yeah, we're already working on next year. We travel up to Northern California and we might play in a game in Hawaii. So, and then, cause you have to get that to the parents quickly. So they can start fundraising for it, in your first off-season meeting in early, winter, February. With that first parent meeting, you got to lay out the plan. Here's what we're doing. Here's the fundraisers. Here's when, deposits are due and stuff like that. So we had a tradition of traveling, every other year for a long time. Coach Bob Johnson used to go to Maui and play Baldwin and stuff like that. And so at St. John Bosco, we traveled every single year. And I think it's amazing, for anyone that hasn't done it. I know Texas schools aren't really allowed to travel, but I think it's a huge, huge advantage to travel early in the year. I think it brings the team together. It's kind of like that in the old days. You used to go away to like fall camp, right? You used to go to, go camp at some college, something like that, and do like a tackle camp. It's kind of like that. We try to travel early, and that process starts a long time ago. But I think, I don't know. I think the technology today. I think on Google Drive. I mean, I can show you if I shared my screen. I can kind of show you what it looks like. But it's pretty cool. Let me know if you want me to do that, Charlie. But it's pretty cool that you can see every opponent, everything we do on the drive. So every coach that's on there has access to everything. My Boost Club president has it, so it's all there. There's no
We
like,
love we'd love to glance. I don't want to get myself in trouble technology wise here, but if it'll somewhere to let you share it, then great.
yeah. So I'm gonna share my screen. All right. Okay, I guess that's what it wants me to do. Okay, so here we go there. So I'm gonna go into shared drives. So you can see I started doing it back 2019. Can you guys see that?
Yep. Yep,
Yes.
we can.
Okay. So if we go back to like this next year I started. So right now I got my off-season calendar. And so there's Christmas break, there's January, there's lifting every single day, day off, day on, all the holidays on there, and it goes
Coach,
all the way.
that's
There's
not showing right now, Coach.
Yeah,
it's not working.
No,
No, it's frozen on just the folder.
Yeah.
Oh shoot, that
maybe
sucks.
just click again. It might just be a little slow because of this.
Okay, why won't it?
There you
Does
go.
that work now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
There it is.
so it has. Let me go back up. So it has, my Christmas break we're on right now. There's 29th, first day of off season. Every day times, okay, going all the way through to we have a ski week out here, if you can believe that. They put all the president's holidays into one, so everyone goes snowboarding. And then into March, into April, spring break, Easter, then our first spring ball, all laid out, for all the families to see everything. Graduation, our dead period, first day of summer football, and it goes all the way through fall camp, scrimmage, game 1, game 0, all the way through. So, that's something we do. And then if I go back, and then I'm sure it's going to get all mad because I got to change the date. But if you go 2025, okay. Can you guys see that now?
Yep.
So you have everything, every folder. So like 2025 academics, okay, all of our grade reports we track. You go back here and you want to look at freshman folder, fall schedules, our passing turn we run, the showcase, our 8th grade program, off-season calendar, which you saw the 2026, offense, all of our opponents. You go to opponents, right? There's our scrimmage, boom, and you got all practices, everything laid in there, scouting reports, all that stuff in there that every coach can see and has access to and we work from. And here's the Macaulay, Tennessee game, right? All the travel stuff, all that stuff we got, scouting report, like it's all laid out right there, for all of our coaches and everyone to see. Obviously, we don't share the game plans with our parents, but we do with the players. The nice thing about it is you click on any of those and you want to just share it on Google, you share it out to your team, and it's all there. Spring ball, staff retreat, our strength and conditioning, folder, summer ball, ASB assemblies, community reach, the banquet, coaches clearances, just all those things that we do, all the tests we give out, the travel trip to Tennessee. They click on that folder. There's your paperwork, roster, all that stuff is just sitting there, ready to go.
And
So we use that a lot.
and these are things that you're showing. I mean, you're not opening up every folder there, but you're showing that your attention to detail in the interview.
Yeah, and you can show that, and then like I said, we use FirstDown PlayBook every day in practice with our scoreboard, and that really allows us to go very, very fast. We are a tempo team, and we want to play fast in all phases. So every single scout card is shown on the scoreboard, and the scout team's always facing the scoreboard, so we can go very, very fast.
So Tracy, I'm going to go on a limb and guess that you haven't coached football, but if you're in that interview and Chad throws that up there, what runs through your mind? I mean, being on the other side of the table, um, speaking to young
I,
coaches out there, you see what Chad just had there. What are you thinking?
No, I'm excited to see more because that's kind of the way I've laid out my athletic office. As it filters down through, and that's exactly what he's done. He's at the top of his chain, and he's filtered down any and everything he can with the football piece. I expect every one of my coaches in every sport to do that. To me, that's the only way that you really survive, and you stay on top of your game as to what's going on. Um, and if I have a coach that doesn't get it, well, this is where we grow our coaches, And I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, Coach Johnson, you really should be producing some great assistant coaches along the way because of the way you've laid out your plan. Surely they're learning from that, and that's a question that I have for you because I just saw so many detailed items just then, and I didn't have to see into it. I just saw the surface of it, and that's what you. But that's how you grow coaches. Am I right about that? Is that where you've come up with this plan?
Yeah, honestly, I know we talked about earlier that there, some high schools have a lot of guys on campus, some guys don't. Unfortunately, our high school, because of all the boomers retiring and they're living in the community in these big houses. Like my dad's one of them. He's a 4-bedroom house by himself, right in the community, and it's so nice out here that no one moves, right? So our school is shrinking, and because our school is shrinking, there's no coaches on campus but me. So my D coordinator is a on campus sub, but he gets shipped off all over district sometimes to go substitute, but that's it. So if you're not extremely organized in a shareable platform like Google Drive is, and you have all these guys coming flying in from the professional world at 3-4 o'clock and just running, literally changing out of their car down to the field, try to get going. If you don't have that, I think it makes it really problematic for everyone to stay organized. But now my guys that are working in the professional world, they might be traveling, whatever. They can get on there and go, hey, here's practice, here's it laid out. We all could, like, for example, we don't come in on Saturdays during the season as a staff. We work from home. A big reason for that is because we all have a bunch of young families, and so we don't want to miss games. And then on Sunday we come together and work all day Sunday till the job gets done. But on Saturday, working from home from that platform, everyone's putting in their piece of the information, their piece of the pie, and creating the dinner, if you will. And then on Sunday we kind of put it all together. So I think a platform like that, where you use Google or use something else, I think it's great to have something like that where everyone kind of can be remote. And that's kind of what COVID taught us. Coach Johnson was talking about, kind of the benefits of COVID, even though we know it was a tough deal for a lot of kids. But COVID forced you to do this. I mean, during COVID, Charlie knows this, but we were doing Zoom 7-on-7s. Because everyone had to be remote, and we would do Zoom 7-on-7. So it forced everyone to get online and put everything online and figure out a way to share it out to everyone. And we kind of just stuck with it because of the challenges we have at a small, we're 1,500 kid high school. So we're a small high school compared to a lot of others.
Mike, are you 100%, or have you always been 100% in control of who your staff is?
Yeah, for the most part, yes.
Okay, is that common? I mean, Jay, if someone takes a Detroit high school, I mean, are they going to have control over who's going to be on their staff, or are they going to naturally inherit some of the coaches that are already there? How does that work? I'm asking it. That's an open question for everybody.
Yeah. For us, that's it. We want the head coaches to be comfortable bringing their own staff because, right, they're responsible for what's going on in their program. So, yeah, for us, that's exactly right.
Our
Anybody?
athletic director can have a say in it. If our athletic director wants something done, I mean, that's what he's been very good. He allows us to, as long as everything's all the dot the I's and cross the T's, everything lines up. He's fine with that as long as you're vouching for him.
Because it goes back a little bit what Tracy just said. I mean, essentially, she said Chad's raising coaches, and that's what it. I know one thing. I know that every head coach I've ever worked for has influenced me one way or another, and whether I learned because they're very organized, or some of them they weren't very organized, and so that to me is kind of who we're talking to right now. We may be talking to coaches that are going into interviews, and Scott, have your coaches always been in the school with you, or have they been outside the school?
So we have 26 coaches over 3 programs, and we're a school of about 2,000. We've been as big as 2,500 to 2,200. So you're not going to get every coach on campus. You might get guys that are within the school district. Um, I coached with a guy that owned his own business. I've coached with guys that were working for Micron and hustling over to school and using that. Like Chad said, you got to be able to have a platform that allows you to communicate things through to everybody so that they all know what's going on and what that time schedule is. I've always had full say over who those 26 guys are, and been able to hire those guys because they're representing you, and obviously you're representing the school. And I think when you talk about growing coaches, like Tracy had said, Chad's definitely growing coaches, and those guys are watching if they're paying attention. Unfortunately, when you go hire a coach, everybody wants to call plays, right? And so sometimes they want to be the head coach because they like calling plays, and the reality is there's just so much more, and teaching and letting those guys in on that. That's what Chad's platform allows you to do, and so we do something very similar. I'm not Chad. I'm not smart enough to use Google. Every time I get into Google, I end up screwing something up or sending it to the wrong person. But we do everything on a website. But I tell our coaches that our schedule starts. We finish the season the weekend before Thanksgiving is the state championship, and we're in the weight room the 1st of December. And so you got to be able to let parents know that. We lift at 5 in the morning, so our kids are rolling in at 5 a.m. and you got 85 kids showing up to hit a weight room. That's you got to make sure those parents are aware of what you're doing, and why you're doing it, and when you're doing it, and being able to communicate. And I live in Idaho. We don't have any snow right now, but there are days when it's snowing. How are we going to communicate when there's a snow day, or we got to cancel that weight room because it's 5 in the morning? I don't want kids on the road. And so being able to teach our coaches that is a huge, huge deal. But to answer your question, Charlie, yeah, we do. We have I do have full say over all the coaches that I hired, and that's the beauty of our district. But we don't have very many guys in the building. I think my last year I had 2 guys in the building out of 26.
Wow. Well,
Charlie,
you just go ahead, Tracy.
Charlie, I find it kind of ironic in this conversation that we're having because in Texas and UIL, every coach that I hire has to be an employee of the school district. They have to be a full-time employee of the school district. And so I don't have that flexibility to be strategic at hiring, someone that I know knows football, but they're not in education. And so it's interesting to hear everyone talking about, all their people, like all of my entire staff at Permian High School, they are teachers at Permian High School. And so it's interesting to hear everyone's perspective on, what goes on in their surroundings.
Yeah, from the football part, I can see where it might be limiting, but at the same time, everybody is in your building. Scott, you hit on a word that I guarantee you every single one of you will have input on, and I just wonder that word's parents, a word that I've not had to deal with being a college coach and NFL coach, but I can see going into an interview where that could be a double-edged sword. I mean, you want to address the issue of parents. We all know, I mean, some are more of a pain probably than the others, but you also have to be aware probably that maybe 1 or 2 of them on the committee. So I don't know, Lauren, jump in here. How do you address parents? If you were a young coach going in, getting your first interview for a head job, just like you were back in Stonewall Jackson, how do you address that? Because you're going to have issues with parents. I do know that, and I've never coached a day of high school football. How would you address that?
Well, Charlie, I'll say this. Understanding, this is kind of going back to what everybody said in the first question before I got booted off by the internet. But you got to know your clientele. You got to know where you're going. You got to know who you're dealing with. And socioeconomically, my first job, parents wanted to help and they wanted to support, but they wanted to help and support with something in return. So it was, I'm going to help serve. Why is my son not playing? Or I'm going to help coach. My son should be a starter now. So I had to deal with that as a very young coach. Shad, you're laughing. You know exactly what it is. So what I basically said in this process, I was just very clear and cut. After dealing with it for a year, maybe 2 years, I said, parents, I'll have a conversation with you about anything that's related to your son. His birthday, how he's doing in school, his social life. But when it comes to football, you're going to have to ask your son. You're going to have to ask your son in front of me why he is not playing. And that eliminated a lot of conversation because the young person knows why they're not playing. The young person knows what the situation is. The second part of it is I've done some very unique things, not to be harmful to anybody's child, but I just done some very unique things. I don't have 5,000 people in the stands every week, but there are some games where we do have that. So when there's not 5,000 people in the stands and there's maybe 1,000, 2,000, you can hear parents saying things. So I've just politely pulled a kid off the field and stood him next to me and told him, when your parents stop talking, then you'll get to play again. So that's worked very, very well for me, Charlie. It's been some really, really good players too. There's been some really good players that have stood next to me. I didn't say anything. I didn't, return the conversation as a young coach.
Awesome.
It was just one of those deals. Your parent wants to talk, then you'll stand next to me until your parents stop talking. And then I just tried to explain to parents in parent meetings that, we're trying to build trust, and your son's not going to trust me if you are continuously bashing me and my staff about the things that we do. And I tell parents, I don't come to your job and tell you how to be a banker. Don't come to my job and tell me how to be a football coach. It's just not going to happen. So when that starts to happen and you've coached 20 plus years, then you can come in and tell me about my job or give me some insight. So we just try to be creative, not to harm the player, not to be responsive to a parent or an adult. But I would just tell a young coach, be creative, understand your environment, be creative, know who you're dealing with, and make sound decisions that you can live with, right? Don't paint yourself in the corner, but make sound decisions that you can live with in your program.
Coach Carter, you probably don't get questions a whole lot these days, but when you were younger, what was your philosophy about that?
Do with it and agree 100% with Coach. That was a great way to do it, though. But when we talk to the kids in the preseason, and we talk in the preseason parent meeting too, like I was saying, there's something we need to know about. There's a situation at home. There's mom and dad aren't together anymore, or something like that. Okay, we're all for that. Or there's something we need to know about. But if it comes down to playing time, and we'll tell the kids this too, is that you need to come in. You talk to your position coach first. Okay, and if you don't like the answer for that, then you can go and then I'll come in on the meeting, and if we have to, we'll go up to the next level on that. But what we'll tell the coaches, and you tell the kid why and we try the sandwich technique most of the time. Like, we try to tell him something he's doing well, then we tell him what he needs to do better to get it on the field. Then we tell him something he's doing well, and then we move on from there. And it usually doesn't get too far past that. And hasn't for a long time with parent wanting a more direct answer, because I tell the guys that your kids are at their age now, they got to handle these problems themselves.
If I can, I'm going to say, that's part of high school football, right? You want those kids to become advocates for themselves, and making sure you tell the parents that. And that's some of the things that when I'm in the interview process, I'm going to make sure that you see what my plan is for dealing with parents. And, when you sit down in an interview, not the principal, if you're fortunate enough to get a guy that's got a football or sports background, fantastic. But not every principal or administrator sitting in on those meetings really cares what play you're calling and how you're doing it. They just want to know you're going to treat those kids well. But they also want to know that you're there for those kids. And I believe that we live in an environment where everyone wants this instant gratification for their child, and they don't want to have to make the kid work for whatever that process is. And one of the things in our program that I'm really proud about is the fact that I don't get conversations with parents. And if I do, it's a simple conversation of, hey, you get Huddle. Huddle's out there, and you watch Huddle every day, and we film practice. Every drill gets filmed, and we got drones flying all over practice, and we're fortunate enough to do that. And I tell parents, watch the practice film. Come watch practice. Feel free to come out. Don't talk to your kid while you're here, and you can be at practice all the time. And if you want to have a conversation about something you see at practice, feel free to talk to me. Don't talk to my assistants. But make sure you set up that. What are those guardrails, right? And it might be 48 hours. You got 48 hours before we talk about anything in the game. Don't approach coach after a ball game. It might be we're not going to talk about playing time. And I love what Lawrence said as far as pull the kid out and have him stand next to you on the sideline. That's a great tool. Get your attention. And I tell parents at the parent meeting that you're going to hurt your kid more you talking for your kid than if your kid comes and advocates for himself. And that's part of the process is teaching these young men and in some cases young ladies how to advocate. How do you ask a question, and how do I go about finding a way? Because obviously, I don't know a coach out there that just makes decisions because he wants to lose. I'm not going to play the best player, right? And so I think that's part of that process.
It's kind of a segue. We're talking about the player that thinks they should be playing and they're not. It's a segue into something that's totally new to me, but I'm guessing that everybody on this panel here is dealing with these days, and that's recruiting. And I'm not talking about college recruiting. I'm talking about the school next door recruiting your players. Is that something in the year 2025, 2026 that we bring up and talk about? Jay, what's it like in Detroit? Do they recruit each other's players? And is there a way, does that ever come up in an interview, or should it? Anything that can be done?
Yeah, it's we call it what are you going to do to get kids in the district, right? We don't necessarily call it recruiting because we can't recruit in our state. So one of our issues is we have Catholic schools that is coming into Detroit and trying to take our best kids, although they're not recruiting. And then we're surrounded by charter schools. So we used to have over 100 and something thousand students and over 50 high schools, and now we're down to 20 because we have charter schools that are around the corner from us. We have Catholic schools that are around. So it's constantly our recruiting rules, and I'm on the board of the MHSAA, which is our association in high school. And one of our strongest deals is the recruiting, transfers and eligibility. They really work hard at that, and even though I'm on the committee, it's still, even in our school, we get transient kids, and that's also the issue. But yeah, it's going on in Detroit, pretty heavily, and people are hiring kids who are affiliated with top, little league programs, hiring them to be on their staff so that they can get kids. So we are a school of choice for a lot of our schools in Michigan. As when you come in as a high school, incoming freshman, you can go to wherever school you want for the most part, unless certain cities and certain towns, they don't allow that. But for the most part, we are open enrollment. And so that's what makes it very, very difficult. And that's why our association has such strict rules. So it's going crazy. They're trying to control it, but it's difficult, but unfortunately ends up hurting the kids in the long run.
Do you even bring it up? And then, is it something you just try to avoid in an interview, or what do you, anybody? Chad, they're recruiting out there, right?
Yeah. No, we
I'm
the
talking
Trinity
about, like,
League, right?
I'm
So
not sure.
Bosco.
I'm just talking about, like, when you're in an interview, do you bring up recruiting, the possibility that people going to try to come in and get your players, that type of thing? I would guess that you don't bring up that you're going to recruit. I don't know, but is there a way? Is there a way that you?
Okay.
I think you're back now.
Yeah. So recruiting is crazy in Southern California. Private schools will literally buy players and offer their families to move $30,000 cash, $70,000. It's crazy. Um, so we're not supposed to recruit And so what we do is we try to do a really good job with the youth. Because of our weather in California, we're able to play football year round, and so 7-on-7 is a big deal for us. And then probably the last 5 years, something called five up front has really taken off, which is basically like the O line D line version of the offseason 7-on-7 circuit. So now we have a youth program that we do. My son's in it. He started last year in 9U, so all the way down to 9 years old, all the way up to 14 as an eighth grader. We have 7-on-7 teams that we coach, as well as five up front teams for the O line, D line that we coach. And our goal in those programs is to, one, keep our kids home. So we develop relationships with them very early on, so they want to come to Mission where they're supposed to go. And then two, trying to prevent other schools from stealing them, right, and recruiting them. If they're always at Mission, always in our weight room, always on our fields, always with us, kind of puts up a wall around our kids so they can't get stolen, but they still do. For example, Mason Graham, was what played for Michigan, its first round draft pick, and McMillan, who plays for the Panthers. Both got stolen from this community to go to private schools and their first round draft pick. So, it happens. Um, we try to prevent it as best we can. And then, obviously, when you do a good job, with the youth kids, parents see it and they want their kid to be a part of it. Right. So almost
Yeah.
if you're doing a great job, you don't have to say a word. They want to be a part of what you're doing. So
What's
that's kind of what we
interesting
do.
Yeah, what's interesting about your answer there is the practical solution. I expected to see some shrugging about what are you going to do, but um, we obviously like that answer because we preach at First Down Playbook a lot about vertical alignment. And Chad, I've been in your playbook before. I see flag football stuff, and a program that grabs the community from the time they're about 5 or 6 year old with flag football all the way up through Pop Warner, all the way up through junior high and high school, then that's great. It's a solution that a young coach could take into an interview about building vertical alignment within your community, and that way you don't have people trying to come in and maybe be quite as successful with stealing your players. Anybody else have anything to add to that before we move on?
Yeah, I would like to say, Charlie, and to the panel, here in our area, our youth football has become saturated. So there's not one particular program that feeds directly into Highland Springs High School. So it's really just getting out, understanding and knowing who you are and being present in our community. The one thing Chad said that I really, really like in that regard is doing things that keep kids around. But like you said, we had a kid just recently spend 2 years with us at the state championship game. He was a ball boy for us. He was running around. We were training him to play quarterback, and he was in the 8th grade. And this year in the 9th grade, he decided to go somewhere else. So what we try to do is we try to maintain what our program is all about. If I didn't get cut off earlier, I would have just talked about having a mission and a vision when you go into a program and making that mission and vision known to everybody in your community. For me, it's developing young men, no matter what. The football will come later. We've always said that, but I think parents need to know. I think that needs to be known and said on a regular basis for anybody that's associated with our program. We're going to develop young men. The football will come, and when it comes, it'll come at a high level. So I think that needs to be said in some term, form, or fashion when somebody's interviewing. Hey, this is my social media plan. This is how I'm going to be presented to the community. This is what I'm going to show through flyers and going and visit the middle schools. That needs to be talked about, your plan of putting that wall up so you keep kids in your program year round.
Excellent. Well, we got about 15 more minutes here, and I want to wrap this thing up. But the one part that can't be ignored, and I understand high school football, so many things that go along with it. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody here would disagree with the fact that if that coach goes 0-10, 2-8 for about 3 years in a row, they probably not going to be around. I mean, the community's going to get him or her, and or somebody is. So there does need to be some preparation and the ability to show that you know football. And once again, you can throw in some tape, I guess, but somebody on that committee is probably going to think like, well, we don't have those kind of players. There's always going to be a reason. But um, Mike, what's when you go in and you want to impress everybody there about you can coach, you know football, and you only have maybe they're going to give you 20 minutes for the X and O part, or I don't know. Maybe you come back for a second interview. Somebody on here mentioned that earlier. What's your philosophy there? And Tracy, want you to be listening because once again, you haven't coached football, but what are you listening for when Mike starts talking about the wing tee or he starts talking about spread offense and the inside zone? Where do your ears go? Maybe with something that you're not quite as familiar with. But Mike, what's your advice for a young coach when he gets talking about the football part of it?
If you listen, like almost all like the interviews now, the guys after, especially the college games, and actually you still hear it somewhere for the pro guys, but they're everybody's always banking everything on fundamentals for how well you can teach the fundamentals. Teaching is coaching, coaching is teaching. However well you can do that. But what I'm saying with the as you're talking as far as building fundamentals, you build fundamentals step by step, and when you get to a certain point, you build your first wall, and if you keep doing the fundamentals, you keep doing everything you need to do, then you start building a house. And when you build a house, you have the foundation, you have everything you're going to need. But I think the ideas behind having the ability to teach the fundamentals is got to be a high point of everything that you're doing, and whether that be things like guy Joe Daniels says all the times, everything is levers. You have 4 or 5 things on every position that you want to teach, that you want to say we have to. One of these 5 aspects are the things that we have to work on in practice, or 2 of these 5 aspects. And I think if you do that with the fundamentals, then you have a shot to move forward.
So you're not going to get into the X and O's at all?
Well, go now to get into the X and O's. If you're going into the X and O's, what several coaches said, looking into the background of what's been going on at the place where you are. I think just going in with a solid thing like, hey, we're going to run the old-fashioned wishbone, and that sometimes is a tough sell for kids. They want to be flying down the field and catching bombs all day. But X and O wise, I would have a basic concept of what you want it to be able to do, whether you're a 40 front, whether you're 30 front, but having a concept and just be able to talk about general things as far as coverage, responsibilities, blocking assignments, whatever it may be, and even ask questions. Especially if you know somebody on the board has questions, you maybe ask that person questions. What are you looking for here? You're looking for me to go into in the detail on the following things or whatever, and I think that's the way I would go about it.
Tracy,
Charlie,
what are you looking for when you're? I'm sorry, Jay. Go ahead, and we'll come back to Tracy.
just really quick. I think what we're looking for is the opportunity to be interchangeable, to be able to have to adapt, right? To adapt to the type of athlete you get, because some of our schools, they just get what they get what comes into school, right? So if they can't run the wing tee and they won't understand it, and it's going to take too much time. You have to be able to open it up. So we just want to look at flexibility, that a coach come in and say, whatever, I'm going to run my program with the type of kids that I have. So I'm going to call set plays. I'm going to run the spread offense, or I'm going to run this with whatever it happens, whatever we have, that's what we're going to run it with. So we look for that adaptability, in coaching.
Tracy, when the coach starts talking about scheme, offense, defense, special teams, or whatever, what are you looking for?
Charlie, when I go out and even just watching practice and stuff, and then when we transfer it into game situations, my big question is when I see things not working, why aren't we trying to change something to make it work? Because, and I've had some coaches in the past that are dead set on running a certain offense or a certain defense, but as I stand back and look, if the kids can't do it, then sometimes we have to make a change. We have to dig deep within. And I know that some coaches are really comfortable with this is what I coach. This is what I do. This is what I teach. But if it doesn't work for the kids, I mean, this is in every sport. you're going to have to make adjustments to what your kids can and can't do. I've watched some of our teams, and I always kind of reflect back probably more to Permian than anything on who we play. Usually I can usually tell before the game ever starts which team is the faster team, which team has the better footwork, as to what's fixing to transpire in a game. But I think as a coach, and I'm speaking on, and I've coached several sports, but if we're not, we've got to coach to what our kids can and can't do. And so I don't want a coach to be dead set on a certain offense when we're not good at that offense. Hopefully, he has a good enough staff to be able to intertwine some other things into it to make it a little bit more acceptable out on the playing field, to be competitive.
That's been a common theme that you all have hit on, that you don't get to choose your players, so to speak, and you better be able to adapt to what you have. As far as Scott,
Can I add a little something
oh,
to what they both said, or all three of them said? I think I think when you get into coaching, and I've had to learn this the hard way, um, it's not what you know, it's what they know. That's number one, right? So I think you have to be a really good teacher. And Tracy, I think everybody thinks about, Texas football as being one of the best places to coach football, right? Along with where Chad is in California. And I think South Florida's pretty good as well. But it's not what you know, it's what they know. And then I think every coach has to hang their hat on principles and concepts. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
concepts are you going to run? Because you can dress it up any way you want to dress it up. And you can do things that you want to do, but you got to have some concepts that you understand clearly, teach those to the kids, and then allow those kids to grow in that process. And then kind of get fancy with it after that moves forward, or after they've developed some fundamental skills, like Mike said.
Scott, I want to ask you. Yeah, I wanted to ask you this because this is something that does carry over from college, and I was in plenty. I've been in plenty of those. I always felt like when I went to an interview, and they were interviewing me, they didn't necessarily want to know an encyclopedia A to Z of everything I knew, but they did want to see me get on the board and coach a play A to Z and see if I could communicate, see if I could. I've always had a saying, uh, even when it was during the season, coach it, teach it like my mom could understand it. Mom never played a day of football. And so I would get on the board and I would literally teach that play A to Z, just like we were going to install it. And so you've been the college and the high school route there. And I think it's very important. You can be here, there, and everywhere if you try to, you know, what everybody is saying is exactly right. You're going to have to conform to your players. But if you're talking wing T 1 second, spread the second 3-4-4-3, you can get yourself in trouble there. So what's your take on that, Scott?
One of the things that I got a cat running around here thinking he can climb on the table. One of the things that I believe that it's important when you're going through an interview process is making sure that you can break it down to the very basic. And when you're talking about high school kids, the difference between high school and college, I get to college, I selected the guys that I'm bringing in. I know they know. I don't have to assume that they might know. I know they know certain things. But at the high school level, I think when I go through the interview process, I want to make sure that I talk to them about the fact that I'm going to break it down to, asking the kid. I'll give you an example. I had a coach who coached for me in 2013, and he's talking to a kid about, hey, you got the three technique. And the kid's looking at him, the kid's saying, yes, I got it. Kid has no idea what the damn three technique is. Right. And so, and I think being able to show that in your interview process of, hey, this is how I break it down, and you layer it. I layer the teaching on this certain play so that it goes from here. I'm going to talk about the techniques, the gaps. I'm going to talk about the alignments, and then I'm going to talk about whether it's a gap scheme is the play I'm talking about. Then I'm going to talk about how I teach that play and what goes into it. And I might even throw in, hey, we're going to teach this offensive guard to trap that defensive end on counter. And we're going to tell him to take a step, and we want him to work to the inside number. I'm going to get in as much detail as I possibly can. Again, assuming that the guy that I'm talking to in that interview has no idea, and he has no idea about what a power play is, or what a sweep, what a toss, rocket toss, or a run and shoot. They just don't have that background. There might be one guy in that room that is even close to you. So getting into that detail of the actual teaching, just like you would if you're in a classroom teaching. I was a health teacher, and if I'm teaching sex ed, I got to go into all the detail of what's required by the school district, and I've got to make sure that I'm able to share that in that interview process. And I think the same thing with that play. If you get into it and you start talking about, hey, we're going to run a 14-yard dig, and that dig, when he gets to 14 yards depth, then the quarterback's going through a progression read or a movement key read. And I think that's all great, but that should all be on the back end of that conversation. Whereas, again, at the college level, I got up on the board and, hey, this is how I attack two-man. This is how I attack cover four. So,
Without sounding too much selfish, self-promotion or shameless self-promotion, I guess what you say a lot of the tools that you could use in an interview these days, as far as being able, Chad talks about the way they use FirstDown playbook with scout teams and that type of thing. I think you can take tools in that will impress a committee, impress a group that's trying to interview you as well. So I know you all very busy people, and I really appreciate the time. I just want to finish with one last thing here, because I do think it falls into a lasting impression. The one thing that I've done, I've never been a head football coach, but I'm the owner of a business now. And so I've sat on both sides of the interview for the first time, meaning I've interviewed plenty of employees here. And it's a lot harder than I thought it was, to be honest. I always thought the hard part was being the person that was interviewed. But some of the things that I've seen after an interview have either elevated my thoughts of someone I just interviewed, or maybe brought it down a little bit. So as you're walking away from that interview, are there some things that you could offer as advice for a young coach? Not trying to put words in anybody's mouth, but follow-up notes, thank yous, that type of thing. Anybody got any? Jay got any advice on that?
Yeah, I think it's always good to send a thank you reply email, because snail mail now is a lot harder to get the personal touch for a letter, which still goes a long way, right? But I think it's important to individualize in the email as well, right? To the panel who was on there, that shows that you were paying attention, that shows that you understand the room, and that that you're really paying attention. So I think return email saying thank you, and kind of reiterating a little bit of your plan, or the reason why you want the job, and you're the best person for the job. I think it always helps.
Would it be corny to ask at the end of the interview for email addresses so you could shoot them a thank you, or is that good
No,
idea, bad idea? I mean,
no, I think that's fine. And for the most part, if you're with the school, that email is pretty consistent. So it's either James.Alexander or what have you. So, but and normally when we interview people, we tell them who's going to be on a panel, and we'll put their information on there, like their email, et cetera, et cetera. So we kind of leave it up to them to do what they want to do with it.
if I can, just on that, stacking on Jay, the idea, the snail mail is slow, but like Chad said, sometimes you're interviewing, you're learning the interview process. And I tell our coaches that have applied, write a handwritten note and send it to those people on the committee, even after and along with that email, because you may not get this job, but they're going to know who you are, and that you are diligent in your process. It might open the next door for you.
I'm glad
Absolutely.
you brought that up, Scott. That's one of the ones I ran into. Actually, I interviewed someone, didn't get the job, but I was extremely impressed with them. And as much told them, like, down the road there might be an opportunity. And then this person kind of ghosted me a couple times and I was like, wow, maybe not quite the person. So just because you don't get the job, maybe there was somebody else that was, maybe a little bit more qualified, a little bit more experienced. Certainly leave that with a good taste in their mouth, in case it ever comes back around. So anybody else with anything parting?
Charlie, I have two of them. The first thing, people at the end of all interviews that I've been a part of, they ask you if you have any questions, and I've blatantly just asked, hey, how can I improve my interviewing process? Right there, right in front of them, and they've given me feedback, and that has been really, really good for me. And I'll give you another one. There was a time where I got the job, my first job, and the guy who was second in line did not get the job. He called me and asked me if we could sit down and have a conversation. I ended up hiring him.
Wow.
Yeah, I ended up hiring him. I thought that was remarkable. He wanted to know what he could do better. He felt like if I got the job, I was a better candidate than he was. So he wanted to spend a little bit of time, just kind of talking about what he can do to get his next job. And before we separated that day, I offered him to be my offensive coordinator at the first job I ever took. He only worked for me for a year, and then he became a coach that I played against on a regular basis.
Well, the one thing that's certain about interview process and a lot of what we talked about today, I don't if you're in Mission Viejo or if you're in Bloomfield High School, New Jersey, it's a people business. I mean, in the interview process, certainly your people skills are going to come out. And so, yeah, it's as a young coach, every young coach that's on the interview process needs to be thinking about that. Any parting shots? Anybody? And once again, I'm tremendously appreciative of holiday season and everybody taking some time out to do this. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure that the young coaches that look at this and watch this will as well. But anybody else have anything?
Charlie, just to add to the end of that, I think it's also imperative to email the administrative assistant who set it up or secretary, because she or he goes a long way with getting to that person who's making a hire, right? And if I used to tell my players all the time, you treat the secretary better than you would treat the boss, because she or he's the one that's going to get you to that person. And so I think it's effective to do that as well.
I think it talks
I,
to you.
I agree. I agree, Jay. A couple of things that, as I look back and think about some of the people that we've gone through, I won't hesitate to throw someone's name out to, all the ADs that I deal with out in Texas. If I've come across someone that maybe didn't get the job, but I really felt that they were pretty strong, or maybe they were just missing one or two little things and they just need a little bit more growth. But I don't hesitate to throw somebody's name out that's impressed me. But I'm not afraid to reach out to and I have a lot of people that I talk to all the time, and ask for names. Like, hey, is there somebody out there that we're missing that maybe needs that opportunity, for that interview, and has just maybe not had that chance. Everybody deserves a chance, and sometimes people get overlooked just because maybe something went wrong, and it blew it for them. And so, I got to teeter totter both ends of it all the time. At all head coaching positions.
Excellent.
If I one last thing too on that same thought is that when you're talking to young coaches and they're applying for jobs, just because you don't get the job, it's not personal. And
Exactly.
they walk away and they were interviewing, an example, the guys that applied for the job, my job this year, and there were guys on the staff, and boy, they were the bottoms were hurt a little bit because they thought they should have got the job, right? And the reality is just because you don't get that job, if you handle it right, you're learning. Chad said, early on in this process, he interviews for jobs that he wasn't going to take. You just want to go through the process. It is a learning process, and you get better each time you do it. We would not, if I didn't practice but once a week and I lost on Friday, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be upset, right? And I think if you've interviewed once and then you're saying that they just, the committee just didn't like me. Sometimes you walk into a job and there's somebody in the district's going to hire no matter what, and that's the guy that's going to get it. And that's just the fact of the matter. And you're hoping to just improve in each and every one of those opportunities. And I tell our coaches all the time, don't take it personal, just learn from it. Next time you walk in, you're going to be better. So again, echoing what Chad said, that's a great piece of advice for young coaches.
Yeah, and then just to piggyback on what Lauren said too, is the question that I asked, in an interview one time is, what can I do better? in my next interview if this is not my job. You know, if I'm not the person you pick, is there anything that I can do better? And then one time the AD was like, no. He said, there's nothing you could do. But at this time, we probably got to go in a different direction because of our climate right now. And then the following year, I got called for that job.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
that's just how it happened.
Excellent. Very good advice from everybody here. Once again, I appreciate it. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure anybody that's getting ready for an interview right now would learn something. So thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your holidays. And if I can ever do anything here at First Down Playbook to help you, please let me know.
Great job putting this together,
Thanks,
John.
Charlie.
Thanks,
Happy
Charlie.
weekend, everyone.
Like everything else
Hey.
you do, first class.
Thank you, guys. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
You
Happy
too.
holidays, happy New Year.